Welcome to Making Metrc Easy, presented by Outlaw Technology. I'm Hans Dietrich.
And I'm Brie Oaxaca, and each week we speak with the companies in the trenches of the seed-to-sale process.
Today we welcome Arick Forton, General Manager of Wise Guys Farms in Clare, Michigan. Hey, Arick.
Hey, how you doing, Hans?
Arick, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started in the industry?
Sure. Actually started off as an outlaw myself in my younger years, selling some black market product, as I feel like a lot of people in the industry did.
Allegedly,
yes, absolutely. No proof of any of that. There was, going from grams and aters up to, more weight, as I feel every street hustler did. Matured into my later years of high school, went and decided maybe college is for me. Looked at where the medical marijuana industry was at the time in 2008, and it started to become a thing here in Michigan where it seemed like maybe this is something I can do legally. So I went to Northwood Business School and studied business, entrepreneurship, business management, wanted to kind of open up like an Amsterdam type thing here in the state. And throughout my years there, I went into some industrial hemp. Commercial cannabis wasn't really as big as it was now. There was no adult use market. It was all just medical. And after leaving Northwood, I met my wife. We planted some roots here up in mid-Michigan, and cannabis in mid-Michigan was nowhere near what it was in Metro Detroit, where I came from. So it was hard to find anybody who was even willing to listen to a business plan that I'd created to start a farm like one that I'm at right now. So I picked up a software sales job, and after a few years of doing that, a buddy of mine called me. I asked if I wanted to come and build some greenhouses locally for what was going to be a cannabis farm. And I was there within an hour helping put together greenhouses that I've never done before. And that was the start of me being a part of a cannabis company.
Wow. I know several people who paid their way through college by allegedly supplying people with some items, let's put it that way.
Yeah, certainly.
And they went on to have successful careers, not in this industry, but I also know quite a few people in this industry who have done the same thing.
Right.
And it's nice to see that people are able to do it legally now.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big change for me. It's funny. I remember conversations with my parents about the stigma around cannabis back then. And they said, this is something you should not be doing. You should, get your head together. And, now we sit down at, family reunions, and I just kind of laugh with them about where I'm at and how, I always throw to my mom every once in a while, remember that time you tried me to get away from the weed thing, and now it's my career? And she doesn't find it as funny as I do, but, it's a good time.
It's been fun to see how perception of cannabis as a whole has, changed over the recent years. And, I'm sure, Hans, you probably speak to this too. You tell folks what you do. And, I always sort of go to people and say, oh, I work for a software company in the cannabis space. And, it's kind of surprising because you meet people who you would expect to have one type of reaction. And next thing you know, it's like a, family friend of mine who I would never peg as a cannabis consumer is all of a sudden telling me about her favorite dispensary down the street in DC. And it's pretty.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been in conversations with people who I've known for, decades now. And when they hear that I'm in cannabis, they just completely open up about it. And, these are people who I, growing up, had no idea that, they even partook. And then they hear, oh, you work at a wheat farm. Well, I know this strain and I grew this, and, your cousin does this. And it's crazy to me that it was such a secret back then growing up, and, not just within my family, but, a lot of people that I knew. And now it's, you can, back where I'm from, you can go to almost, you can't go 5 miles without finding weed on the, the legal market. So it's something different. When I go back home to Sterling Heights and I see billboards, on places where I allegedly used to hang out in that parking lot and, black market product, and now there's a dispensary there, and it's like, wow, it's not what I expected back then. That it would be like this. I'd always hoped that it would, but I didn't think it'd be like that in my hometown. And some of the biggest brands in the state are there now, and it's just wild.
So Arick, tell us a bit about Wise Guys Farms. How long have you been there, and what's their origin story?
Wise Guys started 2020, April of 2020, and the three guys that started it, I mean, it's a little bit of a play on words. The three wise men, there was three founders, and we're also in Wise Township. So that's why the name Wise Guys became a thing. They had originally started that first company that I was referencing. There was five of them, and they started a company. They all knew each other growing up, got together, always had dreams of, having a weed farm, and they broke through in Beaverton, Michigan, way up here in the middle of nowhere. And as the company grew, as most companies I imagine do, a corporate structure kind of came into play. And the three that split off to start Wise Guys didn't really agree with that. And, the vibe just wasn't there. Everything kind of got tightened down, and it wasn't as, for lack of a better term, fun of a place to be. So they left and started Wise Guys. I was with that company, like I mentioned from the beginning. I literally helped break ground with them there. And here at Wise Guys, I was technically employee number one, aside from the three of them. So they had asked me, before I had left the other farm, I worked my way up from, just a greenhouse builder to the IPM specialist to the assistant general manager. And then when we started here, I was the operations manager, because one of the founders was kind of overseeing the general manager roles. They came together here in Wise Township and started this farm, mentioned it to a lot of the other day one employees of the old farm, and they all wanted to jump ship and join us over here because they knew how good of a time we had building the other place. So we just started building, and our first year here was about 4 acres of outdoor. We had plans for a large, couldn't even tell you the square footage, but a large indoor building that would house all of our post-harvest, a couple indoor rooms, some mom rooms, and our office personnel. And we started off just with a few connexes outside and a small garage, 2 hoop house greenhouses, and 3 empty acres. We bought a ton of plastic pallets, a ton of 100-gallon pots, and a ton of dirt, and just started moving things throughout the field, and brought in our first batch of plants, got them into the season, as quickly as we could, started doing clones and moms in the annexes that we had. We just kind of retrofitted those to be indoor grow rooms. And from there, everything kind of came in stages. Midway through the outdoor season of season 1, we started the construction on this building. And about, I want to say April of 2021, we started construction on our 6 greenhouses. Our 4 greenhouses, we kind of split them onto our greenhouses, and the outdoor season came to a close. Everybody moved inside, and we just started cranking away at our indoor rooms. The greenhouses, once we got those finally done, we just started moving plants into that. And every year we have a plan for expansion. After the end of this season, we plan on, adding into some more of our outdoor. We're currently on 40 acres, and we have maybe 5 of them fenced in right now. So we've got a lot of room to grow.
So you're doing indoor and outdoor, greenhouse, you name it. You're doing everything, it sounds like, right?
Yep. Trying to do a little bit of everything.
How many plants would you say you have approximately, when you've got everything going?
When everything's going, it's probably just shy of 10,000. I know that last year, and the way that the Michigan rules have changed recently, where you can stack licenses, you can convert your medical plants over to your all-use plants as long as they're from the same license. So that has changed it a little bit, because we started off with a lot more adult use licenses than medical licenses. The way that they just kind of restructured the rules a few months ago, we had to switch every single plant tag we had from adult use to medical, except for our moms. And then when we harvest them, they switch back as packages over from medical to adult use. And, I just talked with the CRA inspector on Tuesday this week, and he came by for his regular inspection, and we were talking about that. And he's like, that probably made it a lot easier for you guys. And I kind of laughed, because the paperwork aspect of it was certainly not easier. There was a lot of Metrc back and forth that we had to do, not only to transfer all of our licenses, but to transfer a package from the time that it goes, you harvest a medical plant, package it as medical, and then transfer it to adult use. There's just a lot more buttons to click, in Metrc to do that. And, God forbid you have a clerical error and, mess something up. But we did it pretty well. Things went pretty smooth. But yeah, it's just interesting when they made that change, everybody jumped on board with it, and some people considered it like a gray area. But after talking with the inspector, it's almost what they intended. It made it a lot cheaper for grows to scale. The fee for a license went from I think it was upwards of 25,000 plus a year down to and I don't know off the top of my head, but it's significantly cheaper. I want to say like $4,500 or something like that.
That's amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing.
So it definitely changed the way that companies are looking at their license count, but it worked out for us. It worked out really well.
I think you and I started talking right when you were getting going. Maybe
right at the beginning
in the ground.
Yep.
And I forget, how did you come across us in the first place?
I was thinking about that earlier today. I know we used Cannex at the last farm, and we subscribed to Cannex when we started this farm, and it wasn't anything I had hands-on experience with. Being the IPM specialist, I never really did anything in Metrc. I helped with the cut downs, but that was the physical aspect of actually cutting plants down. When it came to Metrc, we had another guy there who handled all of that, and he kind of kept it like a close secret because it was very important information. We felt, as we did here at the beginning, that if you messed one thing up in Metrc, you're on grounds to be cut down entirely, not really knowing how the system worked. So when I started using Cannex, there was definitely some things that I didn't really like about it. What was cool is it's an app on your phone and you can take pictures of stuff, but now I got to pull my phone out when I got gloves on and my hands are covered in trichomes. So I wasn't really in love with their system to begin with.
Let me tell you, we're working closely with Cannex right now, because Cannex does a lot of really great things on their software side, but they kind of realize, hey, we do a lot of great stuff on the RFID and the inventory and the tracking side. So now they're a good partner of ours, and I think I remember those conversations because the team that you worked with before. They were using Cannex. They use Outlaw as well.
Yep. Yeah. They switched over to you guys, and maybe that's what it was. Because now that you say that, that does ring a bell. It definitely had something to do with the relationship that we had from the other farm as well. But yeah, I just remember, either I called you or you called me, or somehow we got to talk at the website and some quick little demo. I was like, well, that seems simple. Like that's what I like, is simplicity. So, we agreed to do a trial term, and we got the OG harvest system and the Desperado. And I remember our first year, doing that initial cut down, and Bree, you were deeply involved with this as well, because I remember calling you at least weekly, with questions on how does this work? We made this mistake. How do we fix this? There was a lot of learning for us, but I just remember the entire system going very smooth. We had 4,000 plants in the first year, and the undertaking that was for people who have never worked in Metrc prior to this was scary. And knowing that all I had to do was scan this tag over this RFID reader and make sure that the plant is hanging on this scale and we're done, that was like that. It was game changing for us. For me personally, being the person who was responsible for it, it made life so much easier. And then even when I had teammates helping me with it, if I had to go out into the field and they had to take over the Outlaw, and maybe they weighed 2 plants at once or something like that, it was very simple for us to just make those changes. And then being able to call Bree whenever and say, hey, we messed this up. How do we fix this? And getting it fixed within minutes, it just made the entire first season that much easier for us.
I'm so glad to hear that. Appreciate that, Arick.
I appreciate you, Bree.
So, but yeah, it sounds like, your team there at Wise Guys, never had to know a life without, harvesting with Outlaw tools. What was it like at the previous place without those tools?
With me having not really much experience doing that part of it, what I remember is there was probably 10 of us, and we'd show up at the farm at 3:00 in the morning to get a head start. And we just start blaring music, very unfortunate for our neighbors, but we start blaring music because that's the type of people we were. We just had a good time hacking plants down. And when we hacked enough plants down, we'd carry them over to this, essentially a trailer. And inside of that trailer, our compliance manager was in there with his phone out, using Cannex, and the plant would be on a scale and he would take a picture of it. And I think I remember him having to type the weight in from the scale. I don't think there was the integration between his phone and the scale at the time, but he could at least scan the plant and it would give the tag number. And then he just, typed in that weight, and then from there they just hung whole plants on the trellis that we were drying on. But I do remember from sharing a side-by-side office with him that he would spend a lot of time in his office on Metrc after the harvest, just making sure things were right, and having to review everything and make sure we got all the plants and that all the weights seemed accurate. I do remember him spending a lot of time in Metrc, even after using the Cannabis system and being in real time putting these numbers in.
You do that now. You do that now after the harvest, right?
Yes, I do that now. I review everything, and I'm a data junkie. I love to see the numbers. I love to see the stats. Not only the time that it takes us from start to finish, but our yield results. We run a lot of different strains, and we always experiment with new strains and new methods. So I'm always comparing. If we ran cherry cookie breath in greenhouse 4 versus cherry cookie breath in greenhouse 3, but we had a slightly different defan technique, I always want to compare those numbers back and forth. So I've got multiple spreadsheets of similar but different data on a lot of different things, and a lot of that I just pull right out of Outlaw or Metrc directly to get some of these numbers. But yeah, I'm the one who overlooks everything, and honestly, there's really not much to overlook when we finish the harvest and my post-harvest team submits it or from the OG harvest system into the outlaw.net. All I have to do is really click a couple boxes and submit it, because everything looks good. Our plant count's right, our weights look right. It's just very, very simple to do.
Yeah, that was one of the big pain points that was told to us when we were doing our beta and developing the systems, was that after the harvest, the time the compliance manager would spend entering the data into Metrc or finding the errors as to why Metrc wouldn't accept them, it took hours. So we worked hard on that, and hopefully it should only take you a couple minutes after each harvest, as we identify what the errors are and you can fix them right away if there are any.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that I can submit a harvest from Outlaw or from the OG harvest system to the .net and then see that everything got submitted, but if there was errors, then those ones didn't get submitted quite yet. And then I can just go in and correct those errors. That makes it very simple. Actually, just this morning, we were destroying some plants, and 2 of the tags that we destroyed wouldn't show up. And it was a strange error code that I got because I haven't really seen it before. So I looked it up and physically looked at the plant tags, and then went into Metrc and saw those plant tags were never even associated to any plants in Metrc. So they were still available in Metrc, but not actually designated to a plant. And I wouldn't have known that those tags would have just been destroyed and then reused or destroyed in the system, but then reused in real life, had I not seen that those 2 errors came up. And, once I corrected those, everything else submitted without a problem. And it's nice because it doesn't hold up your entire harvest. It may only hold up a plant or 2, but the rest of the harvest goes through without any issue. And then that gives you some time to kind of look into those 2 plants that didn't scan properly, or if there's an issue. One of the big things that I like about the OG harvest is and this happens unfortunately more than I think it should, but it's a reality of human error. When we go to plant up a greenhouse and all of these tags get tagged as one strain, and then we go to harvest them and we realize halfway through the cycle, oh, these clone trees got mixed up. We need to change this strain to this other strain. And then we go and scan a tag and it says this isn't the strain that you said it was going to be. That's really nice right there, because we just take that plant, we set it aside. I can go into Metrc and, redesignate that plant as whatever strain it should have been, and then just keep on moving with the harvest. It doesn't stop the entire system, and it doesn't pull data out of Metrc that, we didn't intend to be taken out. It just tells us right up front, hey, you're trying to harvest, cherry cookie breath, then this is a Cadillac rainbow. Because we have had instances with our plants growing so close together that maybe somebody cut down the wrong plant, or they just didn't know what they were doing and brought in the wrong rack of plants first. And those quick errors on the screen that tell you this isn't what you're trying to do, it's foolproof, honestly.
Well, we always say we try to make everything as stoner proof as possible. It's the industry we're in, and we all enjoy it. Speaking of strains, you've mentioned garlic cookie breath a couple times. What is your premium strain? What's your favorite strain that Wise Guys produces?
So my personal favorite, it's an up and coming strain that we have. We've only ran it twice in our facility. It's blueberry pie, and one of the main reasons that I like it is the yields we get off of it. like I said, I'm a numbers guy. I like looking at the stats and the data. This strain is heavy, and it's that's what I look for. Everything that we grow so far has tested, well above what I think would be an industry average. We're always around like 24 to recently we've been closer to 28 and 29% THC. I also look at terpenes, so I want to see what are we getting? Is it 1%, which is not fantastic? Is it 3%, which I would consider average? If it's anything more than that, then I get excited about it. Having talked to some of the processors in the industry, those are numbers that they really like to see. Blueberry pie is one of my favorites. I think it's going to do really well for us. Cherry cookie breath is one that you can find it in almost any greenhouse, along with cherry lime runs, just because it's also a very heavy yielder. It's got a great flavor profile, as you could imagine. The cherry strains, that taste definitely comes out. We have another somewhat new one, Ragu, tested very high, 29.1% with a 4.7% terpene, which, those are numbers that get me excited. And it's not your standard. I think when a lot of people think of, like good smoking weed, they think of, your lemon terpenes and, those fruity ones. This one, as the name would maybe guess, if you buy that kind of pasta sauce, but it's very woody, and the like cloves, it's that type of terpene profile. So it's got a very distinct smell, definitely a different type of flavor, but it's right up there. When you look at THC percents combined with terpenes, and that the terpenes kind of just amplify the high that you'll get from it, regardless of what the THC level is. It's definitely one that's up there and worth, knowing.
So speaking of knowing your products, Arick, where can our listeners find your products there in Michigan?
Well, there's a lot of large dispensary groups that you can go to get our products. Quality Roots is one of our big, I don't know if we could technically consider them a partner, but anybody who we work with, I consider a partner. You guys are a partner of ours. So Quality Roots, they've got a lot of different stores. One of the big ones in Battle Creek. Leaf and Bud Jars is very well known here in Michigan. They're all over the place. You can find.
Ray and I have been at Jars ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. Have you asked for the Wise Guys product?
Yes, we did.
Did you go to the one in Mount Pleasant here?
How'd you guess? That's exactly where we were. That last trade show we were at there.
Yep, absolutely. Greenways in Beaverton, they are personal friends of a lot of the people here at the farm. And Empire, they're right around the corner. We love those guys. They're also a grow and a dispensary, but I've been throughout their facility. They carry our product, Bodega, Butter, Decut, Higher Love, a lot of different places. And we're always trying to fulfill the needs of, those bigger, jars type stores, but also the mom and pop shops. So there's a lot up in the UP as well that we send some product to. I personally have worked at one of those smaller dispensaries back in what I consider the Wild West days, when medical was legal and dispensaries were kind of allowed to pop up. I always make the similarity between a lemonade stand. Technically, you're not supposed to open a lemonade stand on the sidewalk. You need a business permit. That's how a lot of dispensaries started up in the early days here in Michigan. And when I was working at one of those ones, it was very much a mom and pop shop, very small. There weren't many around. So I have a soft place in my heart for those small shops. And I feel that those people are very passionate about what they do. They're not in these big markets to make millions. They want to supply people with either medicine or this recreational herb that they can go out and have a good time with. And having met a lot of those, the people who work at those dispensaries, I just think that they're good people. And, we like to service anybody who would be, willing to carry our product.
They are good people, and they still have the caregiver mentality, which I like. And you are right. You mentioned earlier how many dispensaries and billboards there are in Michigan. And for any of our listeners who have not been there recently, and you see this throughout the country too, but I remember driving with Bree and how many billboards we saw on the way from Detroit to Mount Pleasant, and how many dispensaries are right there in Mount Pleasant, for crying out loud.
Quite a bit.
It's amazing. I'm surprised people grow regular crops anymore. Soon we won't have food. What are we going to do after we smoke and have the munchies? But
that's absolutely right.
I am curious, Arick, operating there in Michigan, what's been your perception of the Michigan market? I know you mentioned earlier that, the regulations changed a bit as far as like your, being more beneficial on the cultivation side, but, what's been your perception of the market overall there?
The market here it's it's kind of crazy, honestly. I know that I guess I'll start with the negatives. The fact that we are so close to the Canadian border, literally bridges that connect us over there. There has been a lot of talk about illegal product coming through the state, and the CRA, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency here in Michigan, they have done a fantastic job of cracking down on that, and they don't pay me to say that. I can attest to this because when we started, the market value for distillate was enough. It was high enough for us to stay in business if that's all that we did, which it wasn't. But if we did, it was high enough. And as soon as this big these operations were going on, were just trucks and trucks of distillate were coming across the bridge, from what I hear, allegedly, it brought the price down a lot, to the point where, running the numbers, if we continued to do any amount of distillate, we would not be able to stay in business. And with, Brian Hanna taking over with the CRA, he actually just said a few weeks ago in one of the Thursday town hall meetings that they are super serious about cracking down on this. And they have. I've seen the distillate price go up. Now, to the positives, I think that, and maybe this is just my perspective, but I guess that is what you asked for, the competitiveness here in Michigan. I remember going to one of the first legislature conversations, I guess, down in Lansing before the medical marijuana scene really took off. And one of the big things that they talked about there was they did not want to have big corporations come in and take over the market. They said that they would rather have, instead of having 5 billionaires, they would rather have hundreds of millionaires, or they would rather help make hundreds of millionaires. So they were very serious from day one about allowing the regular Joes and Janes to enter the market and, make a place for themselves through competition, which I'm all about competition. I love it. I think it definitely drives things to be greater. Some of those people have been weeded out and, they just weren't able to stick around, whether it be through, business planning or just market conditions, or, with strictly outdoor grows, you just have one bad season and that could be it. So I think the market in Michigan is, to me, interesting because we're not really one of those states where you think like greenhouse outdoor weed. You don't really think about that. I know when it started off, a lot of people were doing indoor grows, and they're just not very sustainable. Having done quite a few myself, electricity is expensive. Those lights aren't cheap. Everything being inside it's not fantastic for everybody. We, from the last farm to this one, started using greenhouses and incorporating outdoor. When the CRA field inspector came on Tuesday, the first thing he said to me was, "I hear you guys have some big ass plants, and I want to get my picture taken in front of them." And he's not wrong. I have never seen a plant, 15 feet tall, 12 feet wide. I've never seen it in real life. I've seen pictures of it out in California, on Google and whatnot. Never in my real life. And we have them here, and it's definitely a sight to see. So I think that with the market going kind of towards, indoor is always going to be considered a premium, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think, we have indoor, we've got greenhouse, and I think that the greenhouse is, right up there with it, if not in some cases better. And something that we've learned here is that certain strains grow really well and they don't do well at all outside or in greenhouses. And certain strains do really well in greenhouses and certain strains do really well outside. So I think that if more people kind of looked at that as like, it's much cheaper to grow outside. I can tell you that. Anybody who runs the math will tell you that it's much cheaper to grow outside. I think if more people kind of went that route, which I do see around us, being surrounded by farm fields, I know quite a few, at least a half dozen that are within a few miles of us that have very extensive outdoor crops. It's something where, we're kind of making a name for ourselves, not just wise guys ourselves, but the Michigan market of having some pretty damn good weed.
I agree with you there because, as you know, we're coast to coast. Outlaw works everywhere. And Michigan, you really have a bunch of diverse ways of growing. We see outdoor, indoor, greenhouses. You got everything there and a really good product. And it seems like the state's done a really good job, as you've been saying, because people are still staying profitable, even with all the competition you've got going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, too, that, when Colorado became legal, and California has always been known for having great weed, I think that's something that's slightly different about Michigan, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with sports, but being a Detroit Lions fan my entire life, I've always had a chip on my shoulder. Michigan is a place where everybody has a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove something, and being Lions fan, like, you want to prove something. Fortunately, this year they're doing very well. So that's great for everybody. But I think just as Michiganders or Michiganians, we want to prove something. And I feel like every grower who I've talked to always compares their product to, those of Colorado or those of California in a way where it's like, we can grow better weed than them. Like, we really can. We're not in the best climate zone for it. We're not in the best area, but we really can. And I think that that's a big part of what helps drive the competitive market here in Michigan. And I think that if the federal market opened up and we were able to transfer things across state lines, I think you would kind of see that in other states that don't necessarily allow grows, and they had access to, Michigan cannabis and Colorado and California cannabis. I think that you would see some people kind of gravitate towards the Michigan market. And I'm obviously biased, but I just feel that from having seen product from those other states that, we really do try to prove something here. And it shows, I think, through our product.
And it shows that you care about what you do and you care about the plant, which is also super important.
Absolutely.
So we're getting short on time here, but I wanted to make sure people knew how to find you. Where can they find Wise Guys? What are your social media handles, website, things like that?
So we are very adamant about our Instagram, and we try to keep it simple, as you guys do. We are Wise Guys Farms, at Wise Guys Farms. Guys and farms is both plural. That's also our Facebook page and also our website, www.wiseguysfarms.com. Same as the Instagram, same as the Facebook and any other social media platform. That's how you can find us. Obviously with social media and cannabis, a lot of people get banned or shadow banned from it for posting type of material. Yeah, so we've got a couple other handles, also all under the name Wise Guys. Some have underscores, some have periods, but we try to stick to that one brand.
And I know you said that you allegedly were an outlaw too, but I'd like to finish every episode by asking our questions. So, Bree, why don't you do the honors?
I certainly will. So, Arick, we want to know, who is your favorite outlaw?
Well, I don't think you mean it this way, but the both of you, quite honestly, are my favorite outlaws. You guys have helped us tremendously. But in the other sense of, whether it be fictional or nonfiction, my favorite outlaw is Jim Raynor. He's a character from the StarCraft universe. I'm also a huge nerd, if you couldn't tell from my love of data and numbers. But yes, I played him as a video game character for as long as I can remember. And being a person who's seen as an outlaw by the corrupt republic. And once you get to know him, he's always willing to do the right thing. I would say that he definitely is right up there as my favorite outlaw.
Interesting and great. Everybody has a different outlaw. I thought we'd get we've only had Jesse James once, right, Bree?
We sure have.
Yeah. He's a great one too.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great ones. That's a great one. Well, thank you, Arick, for being on our show.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask on our show about compliance, Metrc, automation, just email them to us at info@outlawtechnology.net. You can download past episodes of our program by going to outlawtechnology.net, cannabisradio.com, or the Cannabis Radio app for iTunes and Google Play, as well as subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and Spotify. Thanks for listening, and be well.